Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everyone, it's your friend Debbie Potts, and I'm here with a new guest on the show that I actually found as I was researching on other podcasts to learn more about the mitochondria function and finding who's an expert in mitochondria function and how it impacts our ability to lose fat, weight, how we can have our athletic performance impacted with poor mitochondria function, and our aging process is dampened, ruined, altered when we have mitochondria damage as it speeds up the aging process. So really, I'm learning more about mitochondria function, how it impacts the whole athlete from inside out, starting, of course, at a cellular level, which would be our mitochondria as our main part of that cell we really want to focus on optimizing. So in the next few months, you'll hear lots of different experts and doctors on the mitochondria, as well as how we can improve our ability to lose fat, weight, athletic performance, longevity, as well as a lot of topics on fasting, intermittent fasting, and low carb and keto, carnivore. How much is too much of anything? And I think we all get sucked in as being type A, competitive athletes of any level. You don't even have to be an athlete, just someone that's really driven, and we kind of obsess about new trends and new discoveries, and we maybe take it to the extreme, as I used to do when I started Bulletproof Coffee when it came out 10 years ago, and think in our head, more is better. The longer I go without food as an athlete, maybe it's better. But how many carbs are good for you without creating damage on your cells and creating an additional source of stress? We all know we have enough stress in our lives, and chronic cardio or cardio training, which includes your swimming, biking, and running, whatever you do for endurance exercise, over 45 minutes of aerobic endurance training has shown to create a source of stress. So more is not better. It's always that Goldilocks effect. How much is too much that impacts you as an individual, that creates an additional source of chronic stress. So as we know, the HPA axis, think of your head, on top of your head, there's a funnel, and all these sources of external stress accumulate into one funnel. And then we've got all of our internal stressors coming up into that funnel. So your hypothalamus has to deal with how much stress can I tolerate? And if it's not given a break, if it's ongoing, not on, off, like I would say that drippy faucet, if it's nonstop, we're going to have dysfunction in our body systems. We're going to have a domino effect of unexplained symptoms that you have no clue for a while they're even going on until it's too late. Just what I explained, what happened to me back in 2013 in my book, Life is Not a Race, that I appreciate more people going to and getting the book and reading about my story, because you'll understand my mission to help you avoid going through what I did, because I just canceled Ironman Canada registration and trying to decide if I should defer it to 2021 if I'm going to be able to run again. And, I don't want to do a race just to do it. And I know a lot of people do that, and they're not being competitive anymore, but they just want to finish more races. And I think I've done enough, and I've done lots of strong races and had a lot of good PRs for myself, but I don't want to ruin myself. And I think what I try to share on this podcast is different ways that maybe you might not hear on other podcasts on how you can really improve your life and your health and your future with, the focus on exercise performance, but really, how are you operating day to day, the rest of the day without your workouts? How is that energy level working for you? How is your digestion working for you? How is your poop? Are you having good elimination processes? Are you detoxifying properly, or is your liver overloaded? All this stuff is what I work with in my coaching program with individuals to figure out what their contributors to what we say in FDN, metabolic chaos. What is going on and those hidden internal stressors? You have no clue what's going on unless you do the functional lab testing. And working with people, I can help kind of peel that onion off layer by layer to figure out different triggers that create anxiety to you or make you feel, stressed all day. And looking at those different lifestyle factors, they're all different for everybody. So anyways, I was doing my research and I found this podcast I listened to with Dr. Molly. And she lives in Maui. So even more, I was like, you're my best friend. I got to talk to you. So, because I love Hawaii. Let me tell you about Dr. Molly. Her mission is to radically extend health span, the number of years free from disease or disability. She aims to maximize human potential by promoting wellness lifestyles that generate optimal health, the ability to adapt and self-manage in the face of social, physical, and emotional challenges. She aims to cultivate global wellness consciousness and create medicine that both improves evolutionary fitness, how well we survive and reproduce in our environment, as well as nurtures the human flourishing. So, I'm going to connect with her. Just listen to that. Her bio is pretty just right on with my mission and what I'm trying to do in the endurance world. But Dr. Molly has been focused on shaping the future of healthcare in her pioneering Silicon Valley medical practice and work with leading companies. Dr. Molly Maloof is one of the cutting edge of using personalized medicine, medical technology, health optimization, and scientific wellness. She is on top of it. Dr. Molly's bold vision includes making these practices more widely accessible as part of the U.S. healthcare system that is focused on improving health versus waiting for chronic illness to develop. And veiling the future of her patient care with actionable insights on adopting the latest practices in personalized medicine, Dr. Molly challenges healthcare practitioners to rethink health and health care to reduce costs and improve patient outcomes. Now, if we could just have, all the doctors thinking that way and having that mindset, that would be a dream come true. Dr. Molly has a concierge practice where she provides health optimization and personalized medicine to high-achieving entrepreneurs, investors, and technology executives in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. Her rigorous data-driven approaches include comprehensive testing of clinical chemistry, metabolomics, microbiome, biometrics, and genomic markers to increase performance and lengthen the health span. So we're going to talk more about how we can improve our performance in life as an athlete and those that are addicted to busyness and living life as a race day after day, and how we can improve that journey of life and make the best of every day, not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring. You really have to work on gratitude and happiness and play, laughter, being silly, because who knows what tomorrow will bring. So I like to I have my clients focus on today, making today the best day ever, and then start the next day. Today is going to be the best day ever. So it's about positive attitude, creating positive energy, positive vibes. And that impacts your health. As one of the big external stressors is emotional toxins, negative self-talk, worrying too much, just always over analyzing things and putting ourselves down. As I did a podcast a few months ago about my long run on Sundays I love, and it's been a struggle, and I don't know why until I talked to Karan from Microbiome Labs. I kind of have a few ideas I'm going to look into, but looking at Vespa and looking at all these different labs myself, I have to just take a breath in and enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, and deal with that struggle in a positive way. And one of my wonderful clients I've had for a long time taught me years ago to say area of opportunity. It's not a negative. And look at every experience that might not be your favorite outcome, but look at at a positive way of what is a gift from that experience? What can I learn and what's my takeaway that's going to help me grow, become a better person? So instead of me having a temper tantrum and a meltdown, as I used to do because I had a horrible workout, I need to just go for a walk and then run a minute or two, then go for a walk. It's not going to be the end of my life if I can't run 15 miles. I have to think that way. Not saying I do, but my goal is to be more positive about that. And just someday I'll be able to run fast again and not have it a struggle. But the point is that we need to work on our health, optimizing our health. And mitochondria are a big part of that. So I'm looking at different research as well as I've talked about a lot lately about the female athlete, how we differ from men. And, when there's too much, as I said earlier, Goldilocks effect, and when you adding too many stressors to your body, on top of endurance training, a busy life, excessive intermittent fasting, not getting enough repair and recovery time, not sleeping enough, maybe forgetting to eat even enough protein and you're just doing fat. I think there's a lot of people doing that. And exercising in that black hole, not training low maffetone style training and then high, doing that 80-20. That, if you don't wear a heart rate monitor, I bet a lot of you are just in that black hole section of example. For me, it's, staying 120 to 130 heart rate. And then when I'm doing my hard intervals, I need to go 155, 165, and then come back down to 130. I try to avoid, which is what's happening on my run, being at 150 heart rate. That's just dead man's land. It's not helping me. It's just stressing my body. So wear a heart rate monitor, test your heart rate variability to measure your recovery, and work on your sleep hygiene. Get to bed before 10. You should be getting that 7 to 9 hours of sleep and working on that sleep hygiene routine so you can really work on your recovery and repair. So anyways, I am introducing Molly, not doing my own show again, so I'm getting used to talking to myself with my microphone. So I'll bring on Molly, and she is in Hawaii when we're talking to her, so she's a little bit different time zone, as I got her up a little earlier so we could do our podcast. But enjoy the show, and make sure you look at the show notes to find out how to find Dr. Molly, and it's drmolly.co for her website. So talk to you on the other side. Excited to have Dr. Molly on the show today, someone that I've been listening to on other podcasts and following up her information because she spoke my language. And my passion and purpose is to help other athletes really learn how to train the whole you to improve fat loss, athletic performance, and longevity. So Molly, thank you for coming on today and sharing your why, your passion, and how you're creating impact in our world.
Oh, thank you. Happy to be here.
So talk a little bit about what you do and who you are and why you do what you do. What leads you to having this great knowledge and spreading this info out there?
Well, I'm a physician, and I really try to focus on how do I extend the health span of my clients, which means how do you make them live as long as possible without disease? So, my practice is really geared around longevity and vitality. I also am an avid researcher, and I teach a course at Stanford on health span. So I'm writing a book right now on the topic, and I just am really passionate about people living more energized and vital and full lives, because I think that the healthcare system as it's designed today is really about fixing sickness and not about giving you, better quality years. And I saw so many people coming into, the healthcare system with hypertension, high cholesterol, high blood sugar. And then these conditions become, strokes and heart disease and diabetes. And I think we have this paradigm all wrong with drugs and surgery. I think that these diseases are manifestations of our lifestyles and our bodies failing to adapt to the demands of an environment and a world that contributes to chronic disease. And so we're just not designed to live in nutrient excess. We're not designed to not move. We're not designed to be stressed out all the time. It's just not, we're not supposed to really live alone. We're not really supposed to be in this kind of lifestyle. And yet we have these modern, cities and modern lives that just don't align with nature. So my job is to help teach the world how to become better adapted, because that's what health is all about. Health is the ability to adapt and self-manage in the face of adversity. It's about how to become resilient and bounce back when life hits you with challenges. And that's what my book's going to be about.
Yay. I'll have to put that quote in my presentation I'm giving at KetoCon and on Jimmy Moore's low carb cruise is, working on figuring out what is health, what is optimizing your health about. It's not taking a supplement and, not working on your lifestyle habits. It's not taking a medication, think that's going to solve everything, or getting a surgery or removing something to make it work better.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. What do you feel that you're doing as a medical doctor to change this journey of other medical directors or doctors? Because it seems like, a lot of people are trained in the medical industry of symptom based, and that's kind of the whole, billion-dollar industry too, is pharmaceutical drugs. So what do you feel like you're learning and what you can do to make some differences in even the medical industry?
Well, the first thing I can do is I can just be an example for other doctors to show them that it's possible to add to their practices health optimization. So that means that you can take laboratory tests and you can learn about a person's health, and you can learn to interpret these tests in new ways that encourage people to change their lifestyles. So, I'm a big believer in functional medicine, but I'm also a believer that, what's happening in healthcare is a shift happening, and there's people who are starting to want more from their doctors than just drugs and surgery. So I see my role as just being an example for people. I mean, when I saw Andrew Weil come along and, develop his own brand and his own anti-inflammatory diet and his version of integrated medicine, I said, you know what, that is something that's super inspiring to me. I can do that someday. So I've gotten, countless letters from medical students and doctors and residents. And so right now it's about being the example, but in the future, it'll probably be about, developing an institute or teaching other doctors about this. So, it's really about kind of building the movement first.
Well, and, I know other doctors like Dr. Ken Berry and Dr. Nally, they're out there speaking, and Dr. Westman, and there's a missing piece of the female perspective. So it was great to have a female leader in the medical industry trying to make this change in our way of thinking of what health is and how to improve the whole you for performance in daily life, as I say, and athletic performance for athletes, but also I keep talking about longevity. And so what are some takeaways that, you might want to help athletes, how, we're putting a lot of stress in our body, just daily life, and we've got a lot of chronic cardio if you're doing endurance events. So what can some athletes do to improve their longevity if they decide still to do marathons and Ironmans and 50K races, and they're not going to change that? What else can we do to improve the process?
Can you repeat that question a little bit more clearly for me?
So for endurance athletes, they're putting their body into chronic stress. They're adding a lot of stressors to an already stressful life.
Yeah.
So what are some things you talk about that we could share with our
Sure.
listeners, how to improve longevity when they're already putting themselves into probably too much exercise?
Right. Well, first and foremost, I think that recovery is everything for exercise, and it's so overlooked by so many people. And yet, we see this overtraining in athletes all the time, where you train so hard and you go to work and you train all day, you work all day, and then you don't actually recover. And so you get more stressed. So the answer to this is recovery. And that means, frankly, investing in your body and getting massage. I'm going to get a massage tomorrow. It's also sauna. It's also taking a day off. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that chronic cardio, specifically high intensity interval training, is really bad for the body if you do like sprint training like every day. But if you give yourself a day off, it seems to mitigate that risk. In terms of long term, like long distance exercise, I also recommend just getting regular labs done and getting your cortisol checked, finding out where your cortisol where does it lie, and what does your curve look like? Is it too low? Is it too high? And also just recognizing that some of your supplements might be helping you and some of them might be harming you. So some people take like turmeric, for example, for aches and pains due to, distance running, and that actually may impair their ability to recover, actually. So you got to be careful with the anti-inflammatories. And I'm just not a big believer in ultra marathons. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not a big believer that people should be doing these, unless you want to shorten your lifespan. So go for it if you're okay with the fact that you're going to shorten your lifespan, but realize that you are going to wear out your body sooner. And there's evidence that people who do ultra marathons do wear out their bodies sooner. Now, it seems like there's actually pretty good evidence that it actually lengthens life as long as you don't overdo it. So I'm not a big believer in marathon running per se, but if you're going to be a distance runner, this is one of the best things you can do for your VO2 max. And VO2 max is a great indicator of long-term health. So it's all about balance. It's all about knowing, honestly, the thing is that people need to get over this idea that like more is better. Like what you need is just enough to maintain your body and your VO2 max, but not so much that you wear yourself out. If you're starting to notice, your joints are starting to fail you, you might want to consider switching to swimming. You might want to switching to things that like cycling, things that may be like less intense on the joints. And those are some of the things that I would think through, is how to plan your life and how to plan your because you got to think about your body like it's at home. And you got to recognize that like homes that get used a lot wear out more. Homes that are taken really good care of and have lots of upkeep and, have people coming in and expecting them and making sure that they're, that things are maintained, those last longer. So you got to think about your home as your temple and fueling it with the right food and giving it the kind of upkeep it needs to make sure it's maintained.
Yes. And I always use a house, your houses and cars are great analogies for all this stuff. So how do you take care of your car? Are you fit on the inside and out? And looking under the hood of your car might look shiny and new on the outside and looking good, but on the inside under the hood, what does it look like? And I think a lot of athletes, they might feel lean and strong, but they don't realize the oxidative stress load they're putting on their body and what they're doing more catabolic versus anabolic. So I always think of the Goldilocks effect, how much is too much for you as an individual, and how, what's the right amount that doesn't create more damage than good.
Exactly.
So what do you feel on nutrition for, there's a lot of people doing carnivore and keto and, the primal paleo. What's kind of your take on athletes, endurance athletes, or just people in general trying to improve longevity? What's your approach to working on nutrition with your clients?
Well, one of the things that I see really go wrong in endurance athletes is the carb addiction. So they've been told for so many years that carbohydrates are the prime fuel for endurance exercise. And they may be true during performance and during a race, but actually the body really needs metabolic flexibility for optimal health. And that means that you can't be on a high carb diet all the time. You actually need to give your body some low carb time as well. And that means that you might want to look into some of the research on training low, for example, which is using a low carb diet during training as a means of giving yourself more conditioning. So what it does is it literally teaches your mitochondria to flip the metabolic switch to fat metabolism instead of just carb metabolism. And what that does is it actually creates more flexible metabolism so that you don't need so much carbohydrate during training to thrive, or those goos and gels during performance, which are not healthy. So I'm a big believer in, giving your body different periods of time that are going to be higher carb and giving your body different periods of time that are lower carb, and using that flipping that switch to optimize health. So one option could be doing some fasted workouts during the week. So one option would be maybe eating carbs throughout the day, but then eating a low carb diet for a dinner for a few weeks. Another option is just learning how to fast and fasting consistently, as long as you maintain your body fat. Doing different types of fasting can actually increase your fat metabolism and your metabolic flexibility as well. I mean, it's challenging work, and you got to really balance it with your stress levels. And I really wouldn't recommend this to somebody who's got a super crazy work schedule and a super crazy workout schedule. You have to be very, very careful not to tax the system and cause too much cortisol excess. So that's why it's important to monitor these things and monitor your heart rate variability and monitor your activity overdoing it. That being said, it can be a great tool for teaching the body how to be more flexible. So just getting off just trying to get off of the carb addiction is really key. And also another really introductory step is just reducing refined carbohydrates and sugar. I can't tell you the number of people that I see eating so many refined carbs and thinking that that's a healthy diet for a runner. Pasta and bread are not healthy foods. Okay. They just aren't, because they're often from, frankly, poor quality sources of grain. And a lot of people don't realize they have leaky gut. They have gut dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And then you go pour a bunch of grain on a person and it's like their gut just is not normal. So if you have any gut dysfunction at all, I would totally give up grain. If you notice that I've seen this really impact people's health regularly. I'm a big believer in more of a primitive diet, more carbohydrates from fruits and tubers and less from grains and beans. I'm not saying these can be completely cut out from your diet, but I am saying that I do see people who have gut dysfunction really thrive on diets that remove these. This is part of the reason why you see the carnivore diet popping up so much, is because people have damaged their guts so terribly that they can't digest plant foods as easily. So, whether you subscribe to the Gundry hypothesis of lectins, or you just have observed clinically that people who have gut dysfunction and autoimmunity don't thrive on these kind of diets, I think it's safe to just experiment with your body and see what happens. See what happens when you give up grains for a month. I mean, this is literally the reason why the Whole30 diet has become so popular. It's because it's an elimination diet that eliminates a lot of inflammatory foods. So funnily enough, it's so interesting that Andrew Weil claimed that his diet was anti-inflammatory, and then you actually see people who go on that kind of diet and their bodies are totally inflamed. And so it's you really have to learn the first principles of why certain things work for people and why they don't. If you are going to eat grains and beans as an endurance athlete, you really need to prepare them traditionally, which means you need to soak and sprout them and you need to cook them thoroughly. If you don't do these, they can be problematic for the gut. And that's part of the reason why a lot of people have trouble with these diets, is they're not preparing these foods appropriately. So first and foremost, the first step to any improvement in metabolic flexibility is eliminating sugar.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, for sure. We've talked for years. We started this as Fit Fat Fast back in 2011, talking about eating fat to burn fat as athletes. And so that is a huge part. But what I'm finding now is a lot of people are fasting maybe too much. And what's the right amount of that? Again, Goldilocks effect. How much of fasted workouts cause stress over time, especially with female athletes and hormonal cycles? If there's more stress you're putting on your body, is one area. It's intermittent fasting is huge, and everyone's, following a lot of the recommendations that they read about on blogs and podcasts, social media, but how to individualize it is key. But also endurance athletes. So where's the fine line, and do we need carbohydrates? So what's your take on, fasting, intermittent fasting? When is it going to be too much, or maybe some red flags that we might see that, all right, maybe that was causing additional stress to my body rather than benefiting my cell autophagy or burning fat?
Sure. Well, the first thing you can do is you can wear a glucose monitor, and you can just put it on and see what's going on when I fast. And if you see your blood sugar rising during a fast, it's usually a pretty good sign that what's happening is you're too stressed out. So there's that. And then the second thing is really looking at your hormones and going and checking out your testosterone and your estrogen and your progesterone and noticing how those are balanced. And if those seem to be dropping, then you might want to take a look at your cortisol too. Things like DHEA is also worth looking at. And, in terms of whether or not we need whether or not we need carbohydrates to function, there are plenty of endurance athletes that are low carb athletes. Now, there is pretty good evidence that suggests it's not optimal for performance. But there are people who are champion ultramarathoners and champion distance runners, and they're on low carb diets. So the truth is that the body's capable of adapting to different diets. And how you feel every day is a good sign of you're adapting to what you're doing.
Yeah, I was reading this long kind of argument post yesterday with some people I know talking about carnivore, and we don't need any carbs, and athletes can get by, your body it's not essential. Carbohydrates are not essential. Essential fatty acids, and there's essential amino acids, but there's no essential carbohydrates. And I agree with that. And we're all about low carb athletes and metabolic flexibility. But I was curious if you think that endurance athletes, or you're training at higher intensities, you always have some carbs you're burning, that we don't want to break down our protein, our muscle, to create some glucose if we need a little extra. So, gluconeogenesis is when your body will make additional glucose, but I don't want to break down my protein, my muscle, to create that. So that's, arguments like people, we don't need carbs. Well, is it different for endurance athletes, or going maybe higher heart rate? They're not doing the maffetone type of low heart rate training. And then there's people doing CrossFit or hit, higher intensity. They're depleting the muscle glycogen.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I see in people who screw this up is they basically develop abdominal fat from cortisol excess. And so what happens is their body goes into a state of stress, and then the stress is like way too high. And so the body has to steal the carbohydrate from protein, right? And so that happens, and then you get this little gut on your stomach, right? Because your body's like now in this cortisol state, in a high cortisol state, it's like, how do I make sure that I've got enough fuel? And so it hoards fuel around the gut, because that's the closest supply of fuel that your liver could tap into if you needed it, if you were in starvation mode. So basically, you got to get enough protein too. And this is something that may go wrong in some people, is like, if you're a pretty hardcore athlete, you need enough protein, you need enough electrolytes, and you need enough fuel to burn so that you are maintaining your body. And it is possible to actually undereat as an endurance athlete. So making sure you just get enough calories is something that you have to think about as well. And then just, thinking through how your body's responding to the winter, type of high fat nutrition. So high fat nutrition is basically like, it basically sends a signal to your body that there's low fuel availability in your environment. And then you have to grapple with that. Your body's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna, burn this fat as fuel. That's great. But you want to be able to flip that switch occasionally and send the signals to your body that there is fuel in your environment. So some people recommend that if you're going to eat a low carb diet, that you spend one day a week carbing up to basically recalibrate those hormone signals. It's really, you got to just try it with your own body. And then on top of that, you have to make sure you get enough nutrient density. You have to make sure that you get a high nutrient density diet so that you don't deplete your nutrients. So that's really important. And that's something that a lot of people overlook. So athletes have higher nutrient demands. And so you just got to make sure that your diet isn't missing anything. So tracking your diet with an app like Chronometer and seeing what happens if you eat a certain way and looking at what's missing from that diet, and refilling it is really key. There's a really great supplement regimen from Thorne that partnered with this I can't think of the name of it, but they partnered with a athletic research group, and they created like a specific multivitamin for athletes. You just have to realize that your body has greater demands metabolically, and so you just got to make sure that you're not stressing the system further by being nutrient deficient. But really, when it comes to, fats versus carbs, it's literally, to me, a matter of, are you metabolically flexible or not, and are you insulin resistant or not? And you'll know that if you wear a glucose monitor, or you get your blood tested, and you see if you have a high fasting glucose, or you see if your post meal glucose is spiking past 120. And if you're spiking regularly past 120 and your fasting glucose is above 90, then you're heading towards insulin resistance. And that's when you need to start modulating your fats and carbs so that you reduce the carb load. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I just did a webinar a couple of days ago with Keto Mojo, and how for athletes can track, what they're eating and their performance and stressors by doing that testing. But it'd be so nice to have that glucose monitor. You wear that all the time? I heard you say.
Yeah, I put them on pretty regularly.
So, but you're a doctor, you can just get it, right? Because it's not easy to get
They're going to be available. You just got to go to your doctor and demand it and be like, look, I'm going to find a new doctor if you don't prescribe this to me.
But does it hurt to get it on? It just sounds awful to put an insertion part.
Not at all. Nah, it doesn't hurt at all. The Abbott Libre doesn't hurt at all.
Okay. That's what I'd love to do, because my story is chronic stress as an athlete, and I got, haven't been able to race since 2013, and just how I was low carb, metabolically efficient, and blah, 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 but I was still insulin resistant. So I keep trying to explain to people chronic stress will impact your blood sugar levels. And I became insulin resistant, even though I was doing all what we talk about, fasted workouts. And
yeah.
So I am trying to get across to people that to have that monitor on, what happens when I'm stressed out in the car, what happens to my blood sugar when I eat too little, or, eat the wrong foods, and I'm reactive to a certain food that will raise my blood sugar up. So it's interesting to track biohack.
You also might want to consider adaptogens.
Yes, for sure.
Different supplements for, chronic stress. Like, I love Chinese herbs for this, specifically Jing supplements. There's one from Longevity Warehouse, and there's one from this company called Super Feast. And they're just fabulous supplements for basically providing you with more Jing. And that's like according to Chinese medicine, it's basically like your energy source. And so, making sure you don't abuse the caffeine, making sure that you get really good rest and sleep.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Yeah. And acupuncture. I'm a big fan of Chinese medicine, and acupuncture does wonders for everything. So another question, I know you research a lot of mitochondria health. I gathered on your other interviews I listened to and your research. So have you been looking at longevity, part of mitochondrial health, and how that relates to HPA axis dysfunction, chronic stress, chronic fatigue, but fat metabolism, how it's all interrelated? So what have you found for what's your interest in mitochondria function and longevity? Well,
the first step of understanding mitochondria is we all know that they're the powerhouse of the cells, right? So we know that they take fuel and they convert it into energy. And so it's kind of like your battery system. If you have enough batteries, you're going to live a lot longer. If you don't have enough batteries, you're going to wear out sooner. And so you need enough energy to maintain the integrity of the structure, which is your body, but you also need the raw materials. So you got to feed the mitochondria what they need, which is vitamins, minerals, water, phytonutrients, fat, carbs, and protein. So they process all this stuff and they use it to run your metabolism. So if you don't send the signals to your body through fitness that you need more mitochondria, your body makes less of them. So what you need to do is you need to tend to them so that they last for longer and that they're higher quality for longer. And this is why it's actually important that people get exercise, because if you don't, then your body starts producing less mitochondria, and then you basically get sick. And this is why sedentary lifestyles are so bad for health.
Mhm.
So, that was that's something that I'm really interested in, because basically a lot of people are damaging their mitochondria through their lifestyles. They're
Yeah.
overtaxing them through what they're putting in them, and they're overeating the wrong foods. And like, just overeating alone is bad for mitochondrial health. And it just like literally spews off more pollution in your cells, which is basically what we call reactive oxygen species. Think about it like a car exhaust pipe. That's what happens when you overeat. It's like you're literally putting too much fuel in the car. And then if you eat the wrong times, like eat late at night, then you're also taxing the system, because you're basically more insulin resistant, or you're not as insulin sensitive later in the evenings. And then the other thing you got to think about is you have to think about, you know, are you putting too much of the wrong fuel in the body at the wrong in the wrong amounts? So like if you eat high fat, high carb together, that also it causes this thing called metabolic gridlock, where your body first has to metabolize the carbohydrates because they burn fastest, quickest. But then you have all this fat sitting around and waiting its turn to get digested. And what happens is it gets stored around organs. And then you get fat, which some people get fat. So you can literally just be eating a high fat, high carb diet, but maybe because you have a fast metabolism, you digest the carbs really quickly, but you still store that fat because it has to wait in line to be digested. So I see this in a lot of people who think that they're like healthy just because they're skinny, but they actually have a lot of visceral fat around their organs. Or maybe they eat like a semi-healthy diet, but they have a high stress level, and that just forces the fuel to be stored around the organs. So you just got to basically take care of these mitochondria so that your body has a healthy fuel metabolism. And it's not going to be healthy if you're eating packaged processed foods. Just isn't going to work well. So if you think about your gut is basically your fuel supply. It's basically your fuel processing plant. So you eat food, it goes, it gets digested in the gut, and then it gets processed there, and then it provides the mitochondria with the fuel. So if your gut isn't healthy, that's a whole nother level of stress on the body, because you're activating the immune system, and the immune system is energy, demanding, because it's kind of like thinking of like you have an army that you got to mount a war. And so if your immune system is constantly being activated, then your gut alone is just draining your energy levels. So, you got to think about your fuel processing plant in your gut. You got to think about the fuel you're actually putting in your body. And you got to think about your metabolism, of whether your metabolism can handle that fuel supply. And if it's the right fuel for the system, and if it's clean fuel. Some people just have dirty fuel, and their fuel has just got all sorts of additives and colors and chemicals and, pollutants, really, and that can damage the microbiome, and that can damage the mitochondria. So you just got to think about the body system and metabolism as, like it's like a home. You got to bring in the right groceries, and you got to take out the garbage too. And so autophagy is taking out the garbage. And that's one of the benefits of exercise as well, is activating autophagy. So, experimenting with a few fasted workouts, and, making sure that you don't stress the system, and making sure that you feed the system with the right fuel. That's really what it's all about. And so that's why I care about mitochondria, because mitochondria, if you do all these things, they're going to be more robust, they're going to be higher quality, and you're going to have more of them for longer, which means you're going to have more energy for longer.
Yeah, that's what, I'm suddenly 48 years old and 49 in November. So I'm looking ahead. I'm just think it's so important to look at longevity and how to improve the journey of life and make it the best you can make it, not just blame the aging process and think this is my new normal and this is how it's going to be, but actually take control and take ownership of your health and do what you can do to improve every cell function that you can do
Right.
as you get older. So what kind of lifestyle habits do you do? What do you eat, and what are your kind of routine and way you love to live your own life?
I'm always switching things up, honestly, just because, I think that the body wants more. I kind of see the metabolism as this thing that you need to cross train. So I go into states of ketosis, and then I'll come out of those states of ketosis. So I'll shift in and out of ketosis depending on the time of the month, depending on what are my demands aerobic, like in terms of exercise, and then what is my body telling me it needs. So, sometimes I'll eat higher carb, sometimes I'll eat lower carb. But it really depends on where I'm at and what I'm doing and what are the demands. So like I eat pretty low carb most of the time, I'd say. It just seems to be what my body responds to.
Mhm.
But I'm in Maui, and so there's a lot of beautiful fruit here. And so I've been really enjoying the fruit. And I think it's important to send the signals to your body of what's available in your environment. So I like to eat locally. I mean, really the big thing for me is like what's locally available. So in Hawaii, I eat more fish because fish is available. In America, I'll eat more meat because that's what's available. There's really good grass-fed beef out here, so I'm eating that. But I'm really into like this primitive diet, which is like what would be available in primitive in your environment. So I almost always, wherever I live, I go to the market to buy my food. And I'm really a big believer in hunting and gathering. So it's like what's available to me and what is local and what's fresh. So anything that you find at a market is typically what's available. And so I go to the bars, I go to the vendors, I talk to people who produce dairy, and I like what's in your food? Where do you get it? How do you make it?
Yeah.
And I make almost everything myself. I don't really eat out very much. I don't really like eating out very much, frankly, because I feel healthier when I don't.
Yes.
So it's about what do I like to eat? What looks good from the market, and what does my body need? And so I'm a big believer in higher fiber diets. So I love greens. And then I love supporting local food vendors. And so if I'm going to eat processed food, it's because somebody made it in their kitchen or in an industrial kitchen, they brought it to the market.
Yeah.
I'm less inclined to eat like junk food at all these days. And I'm really just trying to eliminate all sugar. So that's about it. What else?
Intermittent fasting yourself just kind of naturally, or?
Yeah, I do go through phases of more fasting and less. I'm heading back into an intermittent fasting phase because it seems like what my body needs. But if I'm really stressed out, I don't do as much intermittent fasting because I find that it doesn't respond as well to that.
Yeah. And that's a point I think we need to stress more out there, is that intermittent fasting when you're already stressed or doing longer fasts, that you don't want to do it when you're already in a high stress state of life.
Exactly.
And I think people forget that because they read all these other things like, oh, everyone did a 72-hour fast and not really thinking about, is it right for me this moment in my life? So I appreciate all your information. Where can people learn more, and when can they get your book, and tell us more?
Well, the book is in process, so probably next year. And the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, Molly Maloof, MD, Molly Maloof, or Instagram, drmolly.co, drmolly.co. I'll be probably upping my YouTube game this year. There's a few videos of me on YouTube. Somebody actually made a list of all my videos I've recently discovered, which was really sweet. So I'll be doing more video content this year. And there's a lot of my podcasts on YouTube. On YouTube and on Instagram. YouTube and iTunes. So just search Google for Dr. Molly or Molly Maloof podcast, and you'll find a bunch of my content. I also, I'm occasionally on Twitter, but these are my best platforms. And if you just want to email me if you find anything interesting about this, mmaloof@gmail or stanford.edu.
Awesome.
So
we'll put everything in the show notes, and I will have to connect you with my friend Nikki Hind, who lives in Maui. She does body work in Kona, but they're building a 10-acre retreat up in the, what do you call it, farmland of Maui. And her boyfriend, Nissan, they have all this family land. And so they're building all this stuff, but Please
connect me to them. Yeah.
Yes, you got to meet him. She's like my favorite, fixes all my alignment issues. But he is all about only eating what he can grow, kill, hunt, fish.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's what I'm really trying to do too.
Yeah, it's great when you live in Hawaii, though. It's easier than Seattle. So, all right. Well, thank you, Molly, so much. I love what you say, and it's just right on the same page as myself and what we talk about on this podcast. So thank you for coming on, and we look forward to learning more from you in the future.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.